Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our third panel in this four-part panel series focused on the Massachusetts Data Science Workforce Challenge. For those of you who joined our panels in December and January, welcome back. For those of you who are newly joining us, it's great to have you with us here today. And please be sure to check out our website, which is datascience.edc.org, to view our prior panel recordings, as well as to access other information about this initiative. As I said earlier, my name is Sarita Pillay. I'm Director of STEM and Workforce Development Initiatives at Education Development Center. And we're really thrilled to be sponsoring this series with our partners, the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center and the Massachusetts Biotechnology Education Foundation. And together we developed this series to address a critical issue impacting the biotechnology and life sciences sectors that are really so vital to our state's economy. The purpose of this panel series is to inform and generate awareness among a broad multi-sector group of leaders on four key topics around which these panels have been framed. The first is the nature of the work performed in the data science field and the types of jobs that exist within that field, which is what we discussed in our December panel. Second is the role that existing state education and workforce policies can play in really supporting an early stage initiative, which we are defining as a high school and community college data science initiative. And that was discussed in our January panel. Third is the central role that an early stage initiative can play in expanding both the long-term size and diversity of the future data science workforce, and how diversity and inclusion programs can really serve as models to guide the creation of programs that will engage and support a much broader community of data science students. And that's what we're really excited to be hearing more about in our panel today. And fourth and final in our March panel, looking at EDC's role in securing over $2 million in federal funding for early stage data science initiatives that can, in collaboration with the work of our partners, really provide a new platform for growing the state's data science workforce. So I really hope you'll be able to join us for that panel as well next month. After each panel, we have been and will continue to produce a brief that summarizes the high-level key points generated by the panel discussions, and that will be posted to our website, again, datascience.edc.org. And our website also houses all the other information that's relevant to this initiative, past panel recordings, prior briefs, information on how to stay in touch with us as well. And at the conclusion of this panel series in March, we will be convening a small working group to really distill the knowledge that's been gained from these initiatives in order to develop a strategic, programmatic, and funding plan for what we hope will really be a systemic, sustainable, and scalable early stage initiative for growing the size and diversity of the data science workforce. And we all hope that many of you will stay connected to this initiative and contribute to those efforts, including the efforts of the working group as that work evolves in the coming months. We are delighted and really honored to have as our moderator for today's panel, Kenneth Turner, who joins us in his capacity as President and CEO of the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center, where he directs and oversees the center's operations, investment strategy, programs, and partnerships. Mr. Turner previously held leadership positions with Massport, the Massachusetts Department of Veterans Services, AOL Time Warner, Hallmark Cards, and Hasbro Toys. So thank you very much, Mr. Turner, for being with us today. And thank you also to our esteemed panelists who are joining us today. This panel will be followed by an opportunity for a panelist to respond to questions from you. So please do type your questions into the chat. Our team will be keeping track of them and will pose them to Ken and our panelists during the open Q&A at the end. As Kirsten stated earlier, in order to keep the conversation going and make sure that we give our full attention to each of our panelists, to Ken, to each of the questions that we have planned and that you will pose. We'll be trying to keep time as well, so we'll interject occasionally to move us along to the next speaker or the next question. So with that, I will turn it over to Ken to get us started.
Terrific. Thank you, Sarita, and good morning. And let me start by thanking EDC for hosting such an important conversation. Good morning. My name is Ken Turner, and I'm the president and CEO of the Massachusetts Life Science Center. I have the pleasure of serving in this role of moderator today for this discussion, but I want to not take up too much time on my own, as we have a robust discussion to get to, and I want to give all of our stellar panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves. However, if you just give me a minute, I'd like to talk about why I felt it was important for the Life Sciences Center to be represented for today's virtual conversation. So first and foremost, investing in the next generation of life science professionals is at the core of how we fulfill our mission here at the Massachusetts Life Science Center. Our robust education and workforce programming embodies our belief in the power of experienced learning to cultivate a workforce pipeline. Let me share with you just a couple of examples of what I mean. Our internship challenge, which enhances the talent pipeline for the Massachusetts life science industry by creating hundreds of new internship opportunities each year for college students and recent graduates interested in the life sciences careers. As an extension of the mission of the internship challenge, we have a relatively new data science internship program focused on increasing the availability of data science talent in the life sciences. This program creates new internship opportunities for qualified candidates, including those at the bachelor's, master's, and doctoral levels, by enabling research institutions and companies to hire paid interns for up to 6 months. Another example would be our high school apprentice challenge, which facilitates and funds paid internships for underrepresented and economically disadvantaged high school students throughout the Commonwealth, and also offers a pre-internship laboratory training program for selected high school districts that provides rigorous biotechnology, biomedical, and professional skills development. And finally, as part of an ongoing and strategic effort to support the development of a diverse workforce talent pipeline for the life sciences industry, the center has also partnered with MassBio, MassBioEd, Life Science Cares, and the Bottom Line to administer Project OnRamp, which encourages life sciences employers to hire first-generation Black and Latinx interns who are first-generation college students and students from low-income backgrounds. These workforce efforts are executed in parallel to an equivalently significant portfolio of programs aimed at driving economic development, job creation, innovation, and support of our entrepreneurial community. This includes our Bits to Bytes program, which deploys capital funds towards scientific projects that generate and analyze large data sets to answer pressing life science questions and to attract and train data scientists here in the Commonwealth. I'm proud to lead this organization that has been a global leader in supporting a talented pipeline through an economic and workforce development strategy, providing thousands of students, interns, lab training, and STEM-focused experiential opportunities. However, the times we are in call for new ideas and new innovation in order for us to continue to meet the moment of our life sciences workforce. Part of how we accomplish that is coming together as we're doing this morning to examine what's working. Let's talk about what's not, and let's look clear-eyed at the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead for us. So let's pause for a moment. I'd like for the panel to introduce themselves so we can get into what I hope will be a lively and robust discussion. So if you would, I'm going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves, and if you would, keep it brief so we can get right to the meat of why people are here, which is to hear you respond to our conversation this morning. So Ron, I'm going to start with you.
Thank you, Ken. My name is Ron Walker. I'm the founding executive director of the Coalition of Schools Educating Boys of Color. And our mission for the past 15 years of our existence and operation has been to affirm the social, emotional, cultural, and academic development of boys, young men of color, pre-K through 12. That's the space we work in.
Okay. Let's see. Second up is Pam.
Good morning, and thank you, Ken. My name is Pam Edinger. I'm the president of Bunker Hill Community College, and we are currently situated right at the early college, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, and an entry into community college pipeline for work for data science. We are hoping to train that entry level worker, and also the and helping advancement into the bachelor's and master's programs.
Thank you, Pam. Brenda?
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Ken. My name is Brenda Darden Wilkerson. I'm president and CEO of AnitaB.org, which is a women in tech organization. We're globally situated with communities across the world. And our goal is to make sure that we can create opportunities for as many people as possible to get to the table where tech is created, so that those folks are as diverse as the people for whom the tech will serve.
Thank you, Brenda. And from the bottom line, Ginette.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ginette Saimprevil, and I'm the executive director and proud alum of Bottom Line. At Bottom Line, we support first generation students from low income backgrounds to get into college, but we also stay with them until they graduate. So happy to be here.
Terrific. So a great panel here. So we're going to get right into it. I'm going to do things a little bit differently rather than just throw out a question and wait for panelists to dive in. What I'd like to do is direct a question specifically to one of the panelists. However, having said that, I expect that all the panelists will weigh in on the questions as they feel comfortable doing. So let's start with the first question. And I'm going to direct this to Pam for a response, if you would. What are the essential messages you recommend for outreach efforts to high school and community college students to create awareness about the exciting opportunity in data science careers?
I think a part of the message really is to have our high school students and our entering community college realize that data science is not some space technology out there. It is in their everyday lives, right? We've got to connect data science into what they experience every day and give them real life examples, knowing that they are going to be able to dive in. We really believe that in some ways, data science is a kind of storytelling. Rather, you're telling stories about how data plays a large role in your life. Let's say, how does Google work as algorithms? But at the same time, it can be very, very deep science research on big data and how it affects our everyday lives. So yeah, to connect it to their lives, Ken, I think it's important.
So making it relevant, in effect.
That's correct.
Would anyone else like to weigh in on that? Ginette, Brenda, Ron?
Sure, I'll do a little bit. I think to add to what Pam said, and it's a very exciting area of work for me in my background, is really turning on the lights for students in the earlier part of their development. And I think that as we're talking about life sciences, to be able to go into the life science classrooms to those educators and to those students, and also help them understand the impact they could have in following their journey towards that interest, and connecting that with data science, and making sure that they understand just the rudiments so that they understand that they can start. I think many times what we do in education is we make what we're talking about so complex and so lofty and ethereal that we, unwittingly close the door for a lot of people. So the simpler we can make it to spark an interest and plant a seed, then all along the way, others, as they get into community college, as they go into four-year college, can continue to water those seeds.
That's a great point. I think it may have been Jesse Jackson a long time ago who had a way with rhyming, right? Said something to the effect of, you got to see it to believe it, right? If you if you want to be an astronaut, it'd be kind of helpful to meet an astronaut, right, at some point in your life, so that you can visualize it. So, Ginette, what do you think about that?
That's absolutely right. I love the connection that you made. Like, you have to be able to meet somebody who's done it before to be able to see it tangible, to be able to say that I can do it too. And I love the idea about like the Did You Know campaign, right? There are a lot of things that our students are inundated with. Like, they know about being a cop, they know about being a doctor in the ER because they're watching the shows. Like, how can we bring data science to them, make it more accessible? So it's like, did you know you can do this? Especially in the time that we're living in today, like, let's connect that to them, because it's like, this is why we're saying you need to wear a mask, right? Like, it's the folks that are working in this field that are giving us that information to help us live through this pandemic, if you will. So I think that's important.
No, that's a great point. We should call Dick Wolf on Hollywood and have him make a program about data scientists, right, instead of another cop show. Ron, what do you think?
Well, following my esteemed colleagues, I would say the same thing. One important source of data is one's own body, and starting with something that's personal, your own body, all the things that when we go to doctors to find out, how am I doing? How's my blood pressure? All that's data, and I think sometimes, particularly for people of color, where the health disparities are so huge, I think it's essential that we start early, start younger, and really getting folks not afraid of the word data science, because quite often you get mesmerized and fearful because, I have to say, from my own background, I was awful in science, but I was great in history. Partly because, I said, I can't do this, So I think, again, demystifying, debunking some of those things that sort of stand in the way.
Right. Thank you for that. So let's segue to our next question, and I'm going to direct this to Ron for an initial response, please. If students are interested in a career in data science, what academic supports are most important for sustaining student engagement and success in the new subject area?
Sure. I'd start off by saying, being an elementary, a middle, a high school teacher and principal, I'd say start early. I think, while high school and pre-college is great, I want to see the babies. I want to see the preschool students start early, because they're dealing with science at that preschool age. I'm thinking about my grandkids, who are working with blocks and figuring out this and that start the earlier the better. Number two, I think it has to do a lot with the teachers who are in front of the students. First of all, we all know what it's called, that we want to see more data science and more teachers who look like reflections of who the students are. If you don't see it, you can't believe it. Although I will say I had some great teachers who were white, I probably had fewer who were Black who I could see growing up. So I think that sort of image of what we can do. I would also say I think it's critically important to break the cycle of, well, what did our history bear? Now, we look at 1 month we call Black History Month. We study a few people, but this goes back to antiquity. As I can recall through my history lens, I think it was Pythagoras, Herodotus, that went to Egypt, Kemet, to learn about science and mathematics. So that's not taught in school that way. So our mantra is, when our students don't know their story, they don't know their power. So I think that, just the way in which we inculcate new teachers to a different kind of curricula that has to be culturally responsive, culturally reactive, culturally appreciative, whether you're a Black or white teacher. Black history is American history. So I think it starts from those roots of how we are fueling the pipeline of educators. So when they come in, if there happen to be a white teacher in front of Black kids, that doesn't mean there can't be an exceptional teacher in front of Black kids. If they know, in this day and age of vaccines, to eliminate COVID, I suggest that we create vaccinations and vaccines that are culturally responsive and inoculate from the very stage of someone who wants to become a teacher that inoculate them with a cultural appreciation vaccine. I'll stop right there. I have more to say, but I'll stop right there.
You know, brother, I'm a HBCU grad and a proud Louisiana native, and I'm Catholic, so we don't normally shout out preach, but wow, man, that was fantastic. That was fantastic. Thank you for that, Ron. So Brenda, I wondered if you might weigh in on that as well.
I was hoping you'd give me room there because I will shout out preach as well. I am one of 4 children of 2 educators, 2 Black educators. I went to an all-Black high school, and I think so I had some really great examples in front of me growing up, and I can't overestimate how important that is. And I think also in terms of our educators helping them understand how to broaden their ability to connect is priceless. In many ways, they are gatekeepers. The students and parents, especially those parents who are less educated, are going to listen to the direction of those teachers. And so in order for them to understand how to broaden the participation of marginalized communities, it'd be great to Ron's example, if we would teach, Ida B. Wells, not just in terms of the lynchings, but the data that she chronicled about the lynchings, that's early data science. And if we would think about teaching women in terms of their contributions to science, to technology, outside of the things that we understand of them, like Hedy Lamarr, right? We know her to be an actress, but she actually was very instrumental in a lot of things that we call technical today. So really being able to get in front of educators and help them to broaden sort of the single story that they teach about certain people, we would see just like influx of interest in students because they would be able to connect. And we would also see them being more energetic because their parents would begin to take down the barriers that they have within themselves that are based on their own history of how they weren't taught, or what maybe counselors have been telling them that's not for your kid. They would understand better that it is, that there is a connection. So we in education have a huge responsibility to remake ourselves, to humble ourselves and understand that there are some really simple things we could do if we would just like move the boundaries just so many inches each side and open up the possibility of really educating people on the impact that people have had beyond the 2 paragraphs that we like to teach about them.
Right. So Ginette, as the executive director of Bottom Line, and in the interest of full transparency, I was a double board member eons ago in another life. So I know that program well. I suspect you probably have a point of view.
I do, and it's also very personal. And I love the fact that you brought in the parents into this, right? And talking about broadening their horizon. I'm an immigrant from Haiti, and my parents, they were like, education is your world, and you could either be a doctor, a nurse, or a lawyer. And that was it, right? And so think about broadening that area for my parents, that they can push me into something different. And like, I completely agree. And that's the perspective for me. I think our Bottom Line students come in and they're like, well, I want to be a nurse because I want to help people. And like, how helpful would it be to connect that and like tease that out a little bit? What does it mean to help people? Is it just as a nurse, can you be able to help people? And what is the, like Brenda said earlier, what is the impact that you want to have? And how can data science, this field, help you to do that? And Pam, I know you mentioned this earlier, but I remember when I got the email to participate in this panel, I was like, I can't do this. I don't know anything about data science. What do I really have to share, right? And so there is some education, even for someone like me, even for my staff and other folks, so that we can expose us, the students, to this field.
Terrific. And Pam, I suspect you also have a point of view as a person who's deeply rooted in education and academia.
I don't know it's necessarily a point of view. It's the zeroing in on the elephant in the room, right? Mathematics is a point of inequity. It has been for generations. It has derailed generations of Black and brown boys and girls, and it continues to derail generations of minorities in our communities and poverty, communities of poverty. Our insistence on algebra, trigonometry, and calculus being the only path to science. We've done this for years. We've got to change the understanding in our academy that stats, which is actually absolutely adequate for the social sciences, for data science, is another path for our students, and both adult and young students. And the way that we teach mathematics determines so much about our view on science. This is something that our scholars and our teachers need to wrap their minds around. It shouldn't be controversial. Ron shouldn't have to say, I can't do that math, right? Because that has been, it's systemic, and I think it's tied to both systemic racism and systemic disregard for people of poverty. If you can't do math, if you're from a poor community, you're just not going to be a scientist. That's not acceptable.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for liberating me, because I was horrible in algebra, but I excelled in stats when I got to college. So there you go. So for our third question, and I'm going to direct this to Brenda for an initial response, if she would. How important is it to help students see their ability to succeed in high school, community college, and or college education data science pathways?
So absolutely. I mean, and I think we started talking about some of this already. There's that phrase, you can't be what you can't see. Right. And so it's very important for us to begin to take down the barriers of what a data scientist looks like. We did that in computer science. One of the first campaigns that we did when we were raising the computer science community in Chicago was to put out a campaign in our schools of, what does a computer scientist look like? And we made t-shirts for the kids that said, I am a computer scientist, and not just for the kids, but for the teachers. So we have to understand that this is a systemic problem. Normally when we start talking about students in the margins and why aren't they getting involved, we immediately target them as the problem, when really, if we were to think about it, the students don't make the system, the grown-ups do. So I've always said the challenge is with the grown-ups. And so can we create a system and a culture where we can expect that data scientists are women, and they are people of color, and they're of all ages and sizes, et cetera. And one of the ways to do that is to get data scientists of all different backgrounds to come into the educational community and to speak to educators and to help principals and teachers understand that I'm a data scientist, and talk about the varied way that they got into that position, right? I think we in the STEMs, we talk a lot about the pipeline. I like more to talk about the pathway, because there are lots of different pathways, and that would speak to the long-term game and also to the short-term game. Very important to me, the background in K-12, to plant those seeds and to show students early, and to give them early glimmers of what it means to be a data scientist. But also, what about those folks that are on their second, third, or fourth career that might have gone a different way, and being able to tie them in and help them understand how important their experiences are that could help them branch over and get into data science. So, but I'd have to say it's really important for us to talk about seed funding. We have to have funding in high school and community college programs that will help students to be able to be successful in these areas that are still new and growing. And that includes being able to have wraparound supports. What I saw in our educational community, that many times those students would get that computer science class for 45 minutes, and then there was no after school program. There was no way for them to get support outside of that 45 minutes. And we know that doesn't work. Okay, so really to be able to have those wraparound supports so that they can get as bathed in it as those with privilege who have dads and moms who are engineers, and that stuff is happening at home. We have to figure out a way to replicate that sort of support for those students. We need to create experiential learning that will allow a sheltered entry for students into data science, that shows them what are those middle tier careers, not just again for those high school students, but for those people who are trying to cross over, and we need them they're actually a shorter ramp for us to get more people ultimately into data science careers. So, I mean, there's so many ways for us to begin to make the educational environments more fertile for students while they're there, both in high school, community college. And finally, I want to say, we know that the ultimate data scientists, need 4-year master degrees. How can the 4-year colleges create connections to the community college system so that there are more inexpensive ways and varied ways for students to get those 4-year degree programs and to get ready to go into master's programs. So creating 2+2 pathways that maybe start with certificate programs that give students a glimmer of what it's like and give them a way to get into those gateway jobs so that they can work their way. So we have to think of the multiple ways to get people in and not just one sequential pathway.
Sure. Ron, I wonder if you might have some thoughts on that.
Well, I'll tell you, see, Brenda laid it out. Let me see what I can add a few. I think she laid it out quite nicely. I mean, I think it has to be multiple pathways, multiple entry points. Let me just say this, and she said one thing that I'm really going to zoom in on. A lot of these issues, and Pam said the same thing, are systemic. The system has been designed, has been rigged, if you will, to do exactly what it does. And then when you make an inroad, what the system does is reset itself. So, we have to be constant and vigilant. Now, to that degree, I say we have to have a pathway from the community. The community has to be much more aware of what data science is. And, we have to create the ambassador pathway between young people who can be the ambassadors to the community, going backwards and forwards, because you think about all the data issues within the community, as from sports, young men love and young women love sports, and that's data stuff right there, statistics, to gentrification, to health issues, all the relevant issues that affect the community, affect the life of poor people, Black and brown people, Latinx. These are the kinds of issues that are rich with data opportunities. But I think it's critical for success, back to the systemic issue, to have a leverage point. It can't just come from within. It has to be that, we're taking the conversation about data science to the churches, to the bodegas, to the barbershop, because they're talking data all day long. And so we're breaking down this sort of hierarchical, remote, and breaking it down to say, I've been talking data every day. I didn't know it was data science. So I think, so to decouple that, because the other issue is that, and my space is young men of color, of course, it's been historical dehumanization since day one, landing on the shores. And then that dehumanization rolls into social, emotional, the cultural, the physical dehumanization of boys and young men of color who absolutely say, I don't know math, but yet they can go in a corner and count and figure out all kinds of statistical things that the genius is inside. Right. So it's imperative that not only we select teachers and administrators and school board people and people at higher ed who understand that culturally responsive pedagogy matters. When I used to talk to former commissioners of ed Massachusetts, before he passed away, and I'm blanking on his name, but who I'm talking about, those from Massachusetts, I used to say every day, how's your culture competence profile looking today? And we were good friends. I could talk to him like that, but to say, if it's hard to get out of your mouth that you have to be culturally competent as a teacher, as an administrator, as a policymaker, that's a problem. So I think, again, for me, the leverage point is, what are we doing with the community to really let them understand that they've been sitting on data, using data, applying data, they just didn't call it data science.
Right. So Pam or Ginette, any thoughts?
They dropped the mic, Ken.
I think both of our experts have really gone down the right path.
No, they're absolutely super.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next question. So, and I'm going to direct this to Ginette for an initial response, but again, I'll ask the rest of the panelists to weigh in as well. So, Ginette, what are the wraparound services and other supports that are essential to complementing the academic supports for students to successfully proceed along the pathway? And I know as the head of Bottom Line that you've got a point of view about this, because this is all about how Bottom Line is structured.
Exactly. And, I want to go back to the statement you made at the beginning. Seeing is believing, right? So I think a lot of it is, how do we make sure our students, they see this work in action and they see themselves doing it? So a lot of the things that we do is around the hands-on experience, making sure that you talked earlier about internships. Are there internships available for students so that they can get the hands-on experience that they need? Job shadowing is something we started doing as well, so that they can watch somebody else do it, ask the questions, see what the environment is like, right? Like, what are the platforms they're using? Where are they getting this information? And how do they get this data to make sense and to tell the story, to Pam's point? And then the other piece is around starting early. I think, Ron, you said this earlier, like, we have to start early. We can't wait until the senior year of high school, until they start freshman year of college, to give them that hands-on experience, to be able to see themselves in that field. And then the other piece is that network. Making sure that our students have the network, have someone they can go to in that field, see that, oh, I knew someone who did this work. I can go ahead and ask them, right? I wanted to go to Leslie University, not because I knew so much about it, but because I knew somebody who went there, and they were doing like a master's program that I was interested in. So that's the connection we want to make for our students, so that they can get into that field. And I think it's so important.
Oh, what you said so resonated with me. I had a mentor in high school who was, of all things, the industrial arts teacher. His name was Barry Burkhalter, proud Black educator back in Monroe, Louisiana. And I ended up going to Southern University because Barry went to Southern, right? So he directed me there. And so I actually ended up at Southern, and that's where I got my Navy commission, and the rest, as they say, is history. So you're right. You're right. Absolutely right. Pam, what do you think?
I think we have a wonderful echo chamber around this room. Unfortunately, we're an echo chamber.
Right.
To be realistic, to have a real authentic conversation about this. All of us know what to do around this room, because we've been there, we've seen the students. Where the message is not getting through are really in the higher levels of industry, in the boardrooms of those industry, the way that they view communities of color and communities of poverty and our students' assets, or the lack thereof, has not changed. Right? It is not so much about our willingness to lead our students to these wonderful industries. It's about the acceptance of where our students are and what their assets look like, because that system is not built for our students. And as much as we try to change the situations at our level, early college does wonderful things in bringing students up to that level, yet it can never get the leverage for some reason to scale up. So we can echo all of the solutions that we want around these tables, unless we have warriors, in my mind, who can get into those big industry boardrooms that are not female, that are not of color. Right. This is not going to work. We can scream all we want to each other. So who are those warriors that we're willing to gather around the table and pay some visits to those folks who have the power to change the system?
Well, it sounds like we need to get some evangelists, right? Because you and I both know, in fact, all of us know that, and this is not an indictment, but a fact, right? That, and you touched on it, that the boardrooms and, C-suite of most of our major, companies, and not just in life sciences, but I came from packaged goods and from media, before I came to government. And oftentimes, and I give this story all the time about, a company I worked at. It was a Fortune $100 billion media conglomerate, largest media conglomerate in the world at the time. And I remember, I'd go to the senior management meetings and I'm sitting in the room and there were about 16 of us. And there was me, the black guy, and one woman, right? And then everybody else, looked like the boss, which was white male, right? And nobody saw that there was a problem with that. And it used to drive me nuts. It literally would drive me nuts. And you're right. So we have to figure out how do we connect to those people in power, right? And get them to understand that they have a responsibility and an obligation to their business, right? If you don't want to talk about the moral imperative, let's talk about the business imperative, because that's where I've kind of focused on in my 7 years at the Port Authority as the head of D&I and compliance was, you know what, I'm not gonna try to appeal to your notion of right and wrong. Instead, I'm going to appeal to the almighty dollar. Let's talk about money and the fact that the country is browning, right, each and every day and each and every week and each and every month. If your company is not thinking ahead, you're going to be left in the dust. The time is going to come when Black and brown people are going to be the predominant population of the United States. And of course, we know that scares some people. We've seen that for the last 4 years, and we've seen the outgrowth of that in just the last few weeks. But nonetheless, the demographic tide, can't be stemmed. It's not going to change. So anyway, I kind of went off script.
I don't think that's off script. I don't think that's off script, really.
Oh, well, thank you, Brenda. Thank you. So it looks like we're running a little bit ahead. At this point, I'm supposed to turn it over to Rebecca Lewis so that we can field questions from the audience for our panel. But we're about maybe 15 minutes ahead. So Rebecca, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah,
Can I first respond to the last question?
Yeah,
absolutely.
I want to follow you, Brenda. See, Pam, you opened the door. Now, no way, there ain't no way.
Right. We can't let that go. Right? No. So this is
Brenda, feel free to speak to it because we actually have the time. So go right ahead.
Yeah. So part of what we do at anitaB.org is address just those issues that we just brought up. Is that there's this gap between what's supposed to be and what is, and it's definitely systemic. But there's also a gap between what you just talked about, Ken, and the success of companies and diversity. The numbers are there. The data is there. If you have a more diverse organization, if you have a more diverse board, it's going to impact your bottom line. And so what I scratch my head with is, then why are they not doing it? Right. And so it's a challenge but it has to be met head on. And, I liken it back to the work that we did in Chicago when we were bringing computer science to bear. And we started with early college STEM schools. So early college is an amazing idea. But, to talk about really helping those students in that 17 to 22 area to get opportunities, because we know that that's a problem, right? It is because those companies that could hire them have a faulty understanding of what it means, what the knowledge base is amongst those students and what their capacity is. And so what we did is connect companies to each of those schools. And it was a slog because, they came in with their preconceived notions about, we would never hire anybody without a master's degree. We're like, you've got jobs that could be gateway jobs. Well, I don't know. But it took them having to be up close and personal on a regular basis, seeing the amazing ideas that those students came up with, asking them to come up with problems that they had solved within their organizations. Give those problems to students. Don't tell us how you solve them. Give them to the students. Let's see what ideas they come up with. And to see that they came up with more complex solutions than had even happened within their companies. And over time, they begin to see. And as they begin to see, then they begin to open up opportunities. So we have to be relentless. And I think that's what, because we get it and we say it once and they don't get it and we go away and scratch our heads and we go, I don't know what's wrong with them. Well, we know what's wrong with them. It's systemic.
Right.
And there are a lot of people who have a fixed mindset who create those rooms that you talked about, Ken, where there's one of you and one woman and they're like, that's diversity.
Yep.
And we can't ignore the fact that our society, we've all swam in that nasty pool
Yep.
that in the past said, one person of color is diversity, two is a mob.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That's still in there. And so all of that stuff has to be addressed. So we can talk all day long about curriculum, and we can talk all day long about all of that technical stuff, but until we address the sociological issues,
Right.
that are both within our educational environments and within the corporate environments, and we have a plan that says, you know, sort of like at the shopping mall, you walk in and you go, you are here, and you know where you're trying to get to. If you have to figure out what those steps along the way are and check yourself and make sure that you are making constant progress and you just don't let up.
Right.
You know, when we started talking about computer science, people didn't know what it was. Then we had to almost, you know, I don't like this term, but dumb it down off the level that we started with to help people understand that it was something that they could do, because the policymakers didn't believe that our students could do it, because they looked at the image of those of who was a computer science, and they looked at their students and they said, that's not the same. Right. So we had to break it down, and we had to bring people in front of them. That was part of what I did, because I had been a computer scientist and they would look at me and go, you? But over time, as they continue to see it, and you bring people in from corporate and they see the amazing things, like we would bring kids and bring corporate folks in from some of the biggest companies and have them watch our capstones.
Mm-hmm.
And you would just see the looks on their faces were like, I can't believe what I'm saying.
Right.
And what I'm sharing all of this with you guys to say, we have to continue to have hope.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Pam, you talked about the echo chamber. You're absolutely right. But what I'm going to challenge everybody here is, now let's take what we're talking about out.
Right.
Find yourself a school. Find yourself a community. Find somebody that you can start with, because what they told me I couldn't do got done in 3 years. We had a computer science graduation requirement, still the only one in the United States, because we didn't stop. And so the same thing could happen here. We've had conversations, and Deborah Barbera can tell you, inside the Biden administration about a new Title 10, that would institute innovative tech education within our schools. Now, what does that mean? Funding would flow, training for teachers would flow, education, colleges would have to start to train teachers in those areas, right? So we weren't starting from a place of deficit, we would be starting from a place of richness. So I just want to encourage everybody, this can be done, but we can't just watch it, we're going to have to be active.
Now,
Thank you for that, Brenda.
If I can follow, if I can follow Reverend Wilkerson over there. You're talking about preaching.
Yeah. I feel like I'm on WGBH with the All Revved Up show on Monday afternoons.
Yeah, I'm ready to pass the plate around. You know, but I'll say this just because I agree with 100%. See, my feeling is this: people see the obvious. I think Pam said it best. You know, I've been doing this education work for 50 years. And I've been saying the same thing for 50 years, and I never will give up hope. But I know one thing for sure: I need the white allies to be there to speak the truth to the power.
Right.
They need to be in there speaking,
right.
Because it's dependent. We put a lot of burden on Black folk, brown folk. Always, we've been 400 years of hoping. Right. 400 years of hoping. So you know, it is incumbent upon our white allies to be champions. You know, William Lloyd Garrison was the one who modeled for Frederick Douglass. We know throughout history it's done, you know, and so when we look at these corporate entities, we don't need another George Floyd before people get guilty and they want to open the doors.
Right.
We don't need poverty money. We don't need, you know, charity money. We need to be duly respected based on the talent and the genius we bring. How do I know? Oh, just think about, for example, the what young people relate to, hip hop, right? Now, hip hop, you know, has been taken to make it seem as though it's, you know, saggy pants. No. It's spoken word that's speaking the truth, and it has enriched mainstream. It has enriched Timberland. It has enriched many of these companies who said, I don't like what they're saying, although it's speaking the truth, but I like the model, and how can I translate that into something that can be purchased.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? We know that the dividend of Black people in this country has enriched everybody else. And so to Brenda's point, no, we can't give up. We got to keep speaking. I was talking to a foundation head yesterday because as a nonprofit, you know the deal, always trying to find ways in which we can stay afloat. And so he a question, this is a major foundation. And he said, you know, maybe we should be a little gradual. I said, are you crazy? I said, all due respect, Mr. Executive Director, I've been gradual to death. We don't need to be gradual. We need to make this happen. You know, and then he said, well, you know, one of the things, and he was a good guy. He said, well, I don't see color. Now, why did you say that to me? Because I want you to see me. You know, I want you to move from pre-competence to culturally competent. I want you to move along the continuum. So, you know, it's still teaching to be done.
Right.
EDC, you know, that I know very well, is committed to this work. We have to speak truth to power. And it's going to have to be white warriors, as you say, Pam, that's leading the way.
Right. Terrific. Thank you, guys. You know, what an incredible conversation, and so much passion and so much dedication and so much commitment. You guys are an absolute inspiration, and I got to tell you, you know, I'm in awe of you, just absolutely in awe, and I, you know, could not be as a new leader in a new industry. Who's still trying to get my, you know, mind wrapped around where we need to go as an organization. Well, at least I know now, coming out of this conversation, some folks I'm going to put on speed dial so that you guys can keep kicking me in the butt to make sure that we're doing the right things for the right people in the right sector. So I want to thank EDC for this invitation, because quite frankly, now personally, you know, you've energized me and made me kind of take a step back and think about, you know, there are things that maybe we can be doing at the Mass Life Science Center that might enhance the industry as well in this regard. So to that end, Rebecca Lewis at EDC is going to surface up some questions from the audience. So I want to make sure that we pay respect to that. So Rebecca.
Thank you, Ken. Thanks, everybody. This is really a great conversation. And please, those in the audience, continue to post questions in the chat, and I'll try to add those. We do have some time, which is nice. I know a few of you panelists have seen that there were some questions, and I just want to point those out for all the panelists and allow you to speak as much as you want to about this. One question that was raised was, you know, there was discussion about teachers and the importance of having teachers who look like students and who students can see pathways for themselves. Where that's not always possible, where it's not imminent, that the teaching force will change and provide what is needed. A question was asked about how valuable is it to provide mentors for students to support these dreams when they may not be seeing teachers who look like them succeeding in those fields. What opportunities might there be through out of school time or programs even within school to support students' efforts?
I'll start really quickly. I think it's incredibly important, right? I mean, we know the importance of mentors in all of our lives, right? So we know it's important for students. A couple things. One great program that I think is an example that any school could potentially put on. One of our high schools created a computer science program for the surrounding elementary schools, 2 elementary schools. So the high school students would invite those students, 4th and 5th grade students, into the class they're building on colloquium day, which happened to be Wednesday. And it started out seniors were teaching the 4th and 5th graders computer science. Now, what did that do? First of all, it was in a very challenging neighborhood, but it was one of the top schools in Illinois. And the travesty was that none of the surrounding schools those kids didn't get into that school. So first of all, bringing the kids in gave them a taste of that school, gave them a pathway in. They were like, I can get in there too. And they were taught by students that not only looked like them, but were young like them. The last time I went to visit, the 8th grade students were teaching the 4th grade students. I could almost not tell the difference between who was student, who was teacher. And out of that came some amazing things that you wouldn't have thought would happen. There's a whole core of students now out of that high school who want to be teachers, right? So we developed a new teacher corps, right? And we have a pathway of those students who've now applied and gotten into that highly selective enrollment school. So being able to create an opportunity for students to get that education that they were not able to get in their elementary school that was undersourced. The other thing that could happen is if a school has a college nearby that has data science students in it, they could create perhaps internships for those data science students to do after school programs with those students in those schools, right? So again, you could get students, that's opportunity for those high school students. It's a great connection for those students in the schools, and it's a great support for those high schools or elementary schools that would not be able to do that otherwise. And then you could have industry pay for those internships. So everybody gets to participate.
So if I may make a comment, and I promise not to burn the house down, because I think it is important to talk about the activities that we all do in our field of expertise, right? Ron has done it for ages, and Bottom Line, and Ginette has done it for ages, and Brenda is doing a terrific job. But I have a feeling, and this is just a feeling, that we can't patchwork our way out of this. Right, we can have programs that we do every day, and it helps the next student or the next group of students. But to really make a difference, I have a feeling that we're going to have to do policy work, right? Because the only way that we can scale up all of these options that we know work, because we see students coming through them and they do great. But unless we can get our state or our federal government to really intensively focus on looking to say, okay, like what they did for IT, a large part of our the next group of recovery jobs is going to be in data science, and put aside funding for it and create grants that will focus on data science. Unless there is policy backbone to this, we are always going to be crawling 2 steps forward, 1 step one step backward. So what is it that the Math Life Science Center can do to help shape that policy in the state budget? What can we do together, right, as educational institutions to shape 1 policy or 2 policies that will give us specific funding to take care of all of the constituencies that we talked about today? Yeah, it's great to tell the kids the story. They'll be interested. But if the pathway is not strong enough and there's no financial support, we're back where we started. So it's a consideration I think we need to think about.
No, and I
Yeah, what a chat.
No, go on.
Yeah. I was going to say, Pam, you did not burn the house down, and what a challenge it is, right? Especially as we're talking about being intentional now. Let's do it now. Let's not be gradual. And that's a challenge to me and to all of us in this room. Like, we came here because we realized that this is important and we need to get the word out now. And what I would love for us to do is to start thinking about, like, what are the next steps? What can we do? Like, we are in the rooms. We're going to be the ones to get that needle moving, to get that push, to talk about presenting that data and that information and telling that story to our policymakers, right? To make sure that we get heard and we advocate for our students that way. So I'm taking on that challenge, and I hope I can get some other folks alongside me. Like, let's go, let's do this.
Well, you can count me on your side. All I require, Ginette, is some Jewish Jean-Jean, you know?
You got it, you got it.
Well, again, I think Pam, has a thumb right on the pulse that policy matters.
Right.
There's no question about it. And you think about policy, sometimes we jump right to the higher levels, which we should, but it starts in the classroom. The teacher has policies, right? Because he may see some Black or brown boys as not being, you're always getting in trouble. You're more ready to be, let me refer you for special ed, not gifted and talented. And that starts early because statistics say it. Preschool, more Black boys are suspended from preschool. So policy stuff starts early. So we have to impact it at every level, at the school level, at the district level, policies of who gets referred, and then when you get referred to gifted and talented, what are the supports that you need, the mentoring supports that you need to make sure that you succeed. So I think that the policy lever is the critical one. We have to be articulate, be ready to speak the policy right across the continuum. And one last thing I'll say, I think the mentoring does matter. And I would also say, who are those what I would call community faculty members? Again, you don't have to be certified to be a good mentor. You don't have to have a PhD to know how to get someone to understand mathematical principles. Okay, I have to say this on all due respect for my dear father who's passed away. He was from the Jim Crow South, couldn't read or couldn't write, but he was, as he would say to me, I'm illiterate, but I'm not ignorant. He was one of Philadelphia's biggest number writers. Now, today we call that the lottery, but he was able to facilitate numbers, right, in his head. So the genius has always been there. So technically, someone like that, and we don't want to do illegal stuff, but there's community members that we call our community faculty who should serve as mentors. So all along the way, and then the policy, I totally agree with that.
Ken, did you also want to?
Yeah, I did. I think Pam is spot on, and I appreciate the perspective from Brenda and from Ron as well. That I like the naval officer in me always likes the word bold. I don't believe in incrementalism. It's a strategy. I get it, but it doesn't work for me. I believe you that you bet heavy or go home. And I do believe that in the end, it is about policy. And you're absolutely right that, it starts with us in government, that we have a supremely important role in this conversation this morning, both at the state and the federal level. I think what might be interesting is that I think we might be at a moment in time, particularly with the new administration, just settling in, and coming on the heels of the past administration, which I won't even waste any time talking about their education department and the former Secretary of Education. So we'll leave it at that. I think you can probably figure out what I think of that. But the point being is, it's folks like you that have to push and inform folks like me so that we can, I had a senior vice president back when I was in product in the toy industry. And one of her favorite little sayings, which used to drive me nuts at the time, but now I use it all the time, which was, help me to help you. She used to say it all the time, help me to help you, which literally used to drive me nuts. Help me to help you. And so, you guys are the experts, right? I mean, you truly are. You are the experts. You're the thought leaders. And so, we have to rely on you to inform us so that we can push for, the appropriate policy, the policy that's going to really make an impact. And so already in my head, I'm trying to think, and Ginette kind of touched on this, is, okay, so we're having this great conversation this morning. I honestly didn't know any of you before I came to this conversation. I'm new to my job, 7 weeks in. It's a pretty important role that the center plays. And so the question for me, frankly, as we're talking, I'm literally sitting here this morning going, okay, so now how do I connect with these people beyond this conversation so that I can make a difference in my role? So already, and I don't know the answer to that. I'm just being honest. I don't know the answer. But there's got to be a way that we continue the conversation, continue the connection, continue to build on the collaboration so that you can inform me as a leader in this space so that I can then, take that and frankly, operationalize it, actualize it, make it into something real. So, help me to help you.
I think that's a nice challenge and opportunity that you're posing, Ken, because I think one of the other things that concerns me, and I hate using that word, I'm gonna use it in this respect. We have often talked about how can we collaborate How can we partner? And I at times think that collaboration is easy to say, ain't easy to do,
Correct.
because you have to surface vested interest. You have to determine what are you willing to give up, or what are you
Right.
willing to take on? And I think, but what we know is that the collective impact that comes out of a great collaboration can make all the difference in the world. That's your leverage power. You know, so to have industry and, you know, these cross-sector community folks and EDC working together, understanding that sometimes EGO gets in the way of WE. And so that to really be honest and transparent about what do we see as the end goal, how are we planning to get there together, what are we willing to surface and you know, and not let ourselves get in the way. Because I keep asking myself after so many movements I've been involved in, is this the one? Is this the time? Is it now? So I'm hoping that this combined community that's on this call can see that this is the time. The time can't get any better than now to do this work together.
And if I can just jump in quickly, Ron and Ken, absolutely to speak to that point, one of the primary goals of this series that we've worked on with the Mass Life Sciences Center and Mass Bioed is to culminate in a working group that is this multi-stakeholder group that involves all of the different communities and stakeholders that have been represented across the panel series to really come together and think about how we holistically and systemically create a strategic plan that will really make an impact on data sciences, the life sciences workforce, and hopefully will become a model for other states or for other areas that are of real prime importance in terms of the future of the workforce. So that is absolutely our intent with this. So this has just been such a fantastic, rich conversation. Really, really appreciate it. So I'll let you go back to questions. I think Rebecca has others in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks, Sarita. And I work on a program that's international, and every time I speak with somebody in another country, they are astonished that we do not have federal education policies the way they do that would allow the ramp up of such effort. So if we can make some effort in Massachusetts and really show its efficacy, hopefully we can at least share it and help bring it to other states. But it is such a challenge when you don't have that kind of national coherence around STEM education. So I appreciate what some of the comments that have been made about, you know, who we're speaking with and the fact that we're always sort of trying to change a system that is fundamentally has some really significant flaws. But are there ways that we could change particularly math teaching in K-12 education, and how do we support teachers to change what they're doing and make it more meaningful? We know from EDC's work that making changes in out of school time is a lot easier, but working within that system is really tough. So what lessons can we think about from your work? Pam, do you have?
I want to give you an example. So I'm no longer on this board, but I've continued to track their work. It's the work of Edvestors in Boston, right? So they have focused on a couple of things. One is to bring the arts to Boston public schools in the early grades, and they've done a great job. But they're also beginning to work on math, zero in on math, and we know that is one of the triggers, right, for getting kids into the science careers. And I think they started in like 4th grade, and the key to it is a different kind of pedagogy. And the key to that pedagogy is the teacher. So I think there is something about faculty professional development, right, in the elementary grades, and that changes hearts and minds and the perspective of the teachers. That is our frontline soldier, right, to touch math and make math accessible. And I think the other trigger point that I see are actually our guidance counselors. Right. So the math teacher and the guidance counselor, if I have my druthers and there are 2 things that I would like to be able to touch, those are the 2 things. You can build all the systems that you want. You can build all of the, resources that you want. If you don't have a guidance counselor that says, here's a pathway, and it can go through the community colleges into your master's, then, that whole population that Ron and I and all of us are so concerned about is not going to get there. And if the pedagogy is not going to be there and it turns students off, it's not going to get there. So I think there are some very laser focused ways that we can come together and help.
Thank you. Ron, can I also ask you, particularly, I think your point about particularly young Black boys being targeted with, and put into special education at high numbers is a really important one to maybe expand on here.
Yes, the data still is still not good in terms of Black males and Black genius and Latinx students tapping their talent. I think Pam's point, pedagogy matters and relationships matter, as my mentor James Comer used to say to me endlessly. In fact, I guess my mother, father did too. If you don't know who's in front of you, how can you teach them well? And in addition to that, one of the things that we do, we think is critically important for young men, is to understand their own rite of passage. Now, Ken was talking a little bit about his, I've talked a little bit about mine. There is a rite of passage, and we don't really give good credence to the power of rite of passage development. While it's all around us, many of us in college going through rite of passage. But for men of color, young men of color, it's absolutely critical, because the dehumanization process has been deeply rooted for so long that they believe that they can't do it. They don't like the system. They don't see anybody who looks like them. There's no pathway. So a rite of passage, which we do, and we've created a virtual program that connects traditional African-centric rite of passage to hip hop pedagogy, because we also know young men look at that. And so if you have teachers who are inoculated with that kind of pedagogy and approach, think about the difference that it can make. Moreover, how many of us on this call, again, I fall back on my history roots, know the history of Kemet, Kemetic. Okay, Brenda does, but most folks don't know Kemet before and later called Egypt, Nubia. Again, that historical basis of science and math. They did surgery long before the Greeks did. They invented tetracycline. Now, if I'm a Black boy, brown boy, I'm seeing this. It's changing my mindset. If I'm a teacher who's exposed to it, it's going to impact how they teach. See, what we're getting, let's say it like it is still Eurocentric, Western modes of teaching. That's how schools of education, and it's transmitted to schools. So I'm wearing this hat intentionally, okay? Because there's a difference between schooling and education. And for our boys and young men of color, they've been traditionally schooled. Schooling is for compliance. Education is for liberation. And so a teacher has to come in with that mindset that they want to be a liberator. They want to be an abolitionist teaching. Those policies that are hindering their young men, they're going to be the first ones who will fight to change those policies and stand in the breach for them. So it takes a particular mindset to even come into teaching, and to really say, I can make a difference, because it's a calling, not a job.
I love the education for liberation. Very much speaks to what we need. You're right. Brenda, do you have?
Yeah, I'm struggling with what to add to that, because this is so powerful. And I certainly don't want to offend anybody, but I can tell you in my experience, you can only help somebody if you love them. And I'm not talking about, love smooch. I'm talking about if you understand the foundation of what love means. And I know that that's what I got in my education from my Black teachers. They could relate to me. And so they showed me the pathway. And it wasn't just about, reading, writing, arithmetic. It was a lifestyle of learning that was preparing me to be a citizen and to contribute and to address those things that would be before me. And what we've done by gentrifying the classroom is to put a bunch of people in front of students who cannot relate to them, who have learned that these students are deficit. And what I hate are those terms that we like to use around our students. We use first generation. We use free and reduced lunch as though what they eat has anything to do with their ability to learn. We know they need to eat, but that term separates them from the other, the center. And so if you think that those students who many times have literally had to crawl across glass to get into those classrooms, don't absorb that those teachers are looking at them as other, and that does not impact their ability to learn, you have a lot to learn. And that transfers to the community college classroom. When I was adjunct faculty in the community college, I could almost tap the ills of what had held that student back to their 5th grade teacher. They talk about, I'm not good at writing. I'm not good at writing. I was like, who told you that? And pretty soon somebody's name would surface because they'd heard it. And many times those were people on the margins. They were women, they were people of color who had come through a system that had told them that they couldn't. And so we can put all of the curriculum in place, we can put the technology in place, we can put all that stuff in place, and we have to. But until we address these things, we're going to have a weak plant. We're going to have a weak crop. We're going to have a weak harvest, because only the strongest are going to be able to have support from other places when they should be able to get it right there in the classroom. I mean, I'm not saying the teacher should do everything, but you cannot be a minus by being able to respect someone's humanity and create a culture where the expectation is everybody can, because in fact, everyone can. And, to Ron's point, to teach that history correctly is amazing. When I talk to women who are in their 30s and 40s who want to cross over into tech, and I tell them about Grace Hopper. I didn't learn about Grace Hopper. I'm a computer scientist. Nobody taught me. When they're like, what, a woman created what? When I talk to them about the ENIAC women, and now we know about, the hidden figures, just the light that gets infused into people that know that there's a possibility, that gets robbed in education many times because of the Eurocentric way we teach it and the patriarchal way that we teach it. So those of us in education, we have the ability to do something about that, and policymakers need, and I heard somebody say this earlier, to have a policymaker that understands all of this is gold, right? Because they're going to make sure that those policies that are in place that probably are creating barriers come down.
Can I just say, Brenda Wilkerson for governor, you're running anytime soon? Ginette, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I was definitely going to say the thing about like language matter and sort of drawing from my own experiences. And Brenda, I feel like I shouldn't even repeat it, but you said it so well, and just really thinking about where your students are coming from. What are the things that they've been hearing all of their lives? And to be able to tie that in and make sure you're pushing them. And to Brenda's point, not giving up is so important, because like I gave up on myself with math because I was like, I can't get it. And I heard other places that makes sense. You're a woman and you're a woman of color. Like, of course you can't get it because it's not for you, it's for the guys, right? And so not having a teacher who understood that and was able to, was just like, all right, you're good at percentages, let's just keep going there. That didn't help me. So I feel like I'm just repeating you, Brenda, but I think it's really important for teachers to like remember what students have been conditioned to hear and conditioned to do and kind of move to fill that void. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, no, absolutely. I know we're almost out of time, but I do want to just give one more quick question and an opportunity for you all to speak to this. I think we've talked a lot about what we can do in the education system. what else can we draw from other programs that you're aware of, other efforts that can do more around outreach to students and do more to help them understand at a young age the possibilities for them, whether it's career possibilities or just self-efficacy. And Ron, I'm thinking back to the point you made early on about your body and your health and understanding that, but also about data around your community and the health of your community. Are there things we can be doing to help support such efforts in Massachusetts? Ron, do you want to start?
One of the things I think that the committee can do, again, I'm being redundant, but reaching out to those places in the community that you don't typically reach out to. EDC and there's networks of churches that I know that are active in education. There are youth enrichment centers that are active in education. Reach out to the not usual suspects. And really, again, it's about, I think, building this movement, if you will, a campaign, if you will, that's going to have that's deeply rooted. See, because the young people we're talking about come from these communities, and they can be the ambassadors, but their parents, their fictive kin, you know what that is, right, Rebecca? Fictive kin. Okay, those people who are not your blood relatives, the neighbor across the street. I used to, if I got in trouble, she'd say, "Now, Ronald," and when they call you Ronald, then you're in trouble. She'd tell my mother. So, we have lost that village feel. What I'm saying, the African terminology is Ubuntu. I am because we are. So it's going to take that kind of really scaffolding, networking beyond the walls of academia or EDC's walls into the deeply rooted community. That's where I think, we can make a difference.
Thank you. Others in the panel? Pam?
I am with Ron about the community, but we also have to begin thinking about the fact that the demographic cliff is coming, right? We're going to lose 20% of our high school graduates over the next 5 to 8 years. So the workforce going into data science are both high school grads, traditional high school grads, and also your adult learner. So if we're going to go down the road of creating a campaign of notice, of spreading the word about data science, one of the things that we may have to do is to figure out who's our audience, right? So the parent, maybe it's a 2-generation strategy that while you inform about what's available for the child, you're also really talking about the future or a different career for the parents, and that they are multilingual. So everything going on English is not going to help us. And they are also multicultural. So telling stories in different ways are going to be helpful to us. And it is a more complex, kind of strategy than we can go through in an hour, but we should not be doing strategies in 8 different places. Somebody needs to focus us, and we need a group to do the strategy in the same place. So we all share that same strategy. So
Great. Thank you. Ginette or Brenda, can I invite you to say any last words on this? Brenda?
Here's my last word. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You go first.
No,
you go first.
I was going to ask, I lost sound for a few minutes. I was going to ask to repeat the question, so apologies for that.
That's okay, Ginette. No, I saw you were having some challenges with your connection. It was really just around what outreach can we be doing to make a real difference in attracting youth who may not be interested in data science into pursuing and thinking about data science, whether it's careers or even just in their own personal lives and how they think about data. Brenda, while Ginette maybe thinks about that, if you want to respond.
Yeah, I mean, start where you are. We always feel like we have to go afar to find a way to be supportive. You can, find the youth group at your church or synagogue. You can Figure out who is in your community or who's in your feed, that you could find activities that are happening where people are actually asking these questions and we just haven't, connected that, oh, I could make a contribution there. It always feels harder to start and just start. I could give you a story about when I was hungry to make a difference about computer science in Chicago. I just started to talk about it, start talking about it in your different spaces. And I was meeting with a group of folks from Microsoft who introduced me to Deborah. And, we got to do so many amazing things after that in terms of creating pathways, early college, all of that, because I was hungry and I talked about it. So I think, many times we're too prim and proper. We keep this stuff to ourselves. Get into the community and start talking about it. And you're going to find a pilgrim or two that wants to go with you. And then it'll just grow from there.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the last piece is like, there is a hunger for it. We have a lot of people who are just kind of like unsure about what the next steps are, what the careers are. I think parents in the same way. So let's blow this up. Let's invite more people. Like, I want to start pulling in my families and, my families and friends and so on, and just start. It's the same thing as networking, right? Like, I'm not necessarily on social media, but I agree, Brenda. Like, what are some of the key phrases? What's the new hashtag that we can do to kind of bring that up? Because there is a hunger. There are people who are still unsure, and let's make it relevant, and let's make it open for folks to be able to ask questions. I think, what is the platform for people to ask questions about? What is this? You mentioned this. I've been seeing this a lot. Like, let me do more research on that. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Well, we are going to be continuing this panel series. We have another panel next month, and our website we will put up in chat. We want to engage folks in this effort. We really do. We are not seeing ourselves as leading this effort, just helping convene it and bringing together the people who should be at the table. I'm going to turn back to Ken to make some final remarks. Ken?
Sure. I don't know how to sum this up, to be honest with you. What I would say is this, is that, listening and engaging with Brenda and Pam and Ginette and Ron this morning has, as I mentioned earlier, been, just beyond inspiring. You guys are just brilliant advocates and champions in this space. And so I think the question for government and public sector and policymakers and folks like me is to try to figure out how do you continue this conversation in a way that, again, that operationalize it, that makes it real, right? That we take it from concept and conceptualization and conversation and intellectualization into action, because I'm an action guy. And so I'm going to ask you guys, again, to kind of nibble on this and kind of chew on it and ruminate on it. And you guys have my contact information. My door is open anytime, you want to re-engage. But I'll leave you with this thought is, again, help me to help you. And I want to thank the good folks at EDC, Sarita, Rebecca, and the entire team for, bringing this group together today. What a terrific conversation, and what terrific work you're doing. And it's clear to me that we've got a lot more work to do. So Sarita, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, panelists. It's been an incredibly rich conversation, really powerful, really thought-provoking. Absolutely join us in this journey as we move forward past our March panel into forming the working group that I talked about earlier and that others have pointed to. Again, our last and final panel in the series is in March, and after that we will be working to sort of put together this working group and really map out a plan that takes into consideration all the incredible feedback and input that we've gotten over the course of these 3 panels and the panel to come in in March. So thank you all again. Ken, Pam, Brenda, Ginette, and Ron, this has been fantastic. Thank you to all of us who joined us. And please stay tuned and follow us on our website, datascience.edc.org. Thank you so much.